Have you ever stopped to think, the federal government taking in all these, billions and billions and trillions of dollars of your money? Do you ever stop to think, where does a lot of this money go? You might remember it was Matt Gaetz that exposed the fact that IRS agents are armed. Now, prior to 2020, for example, there were 4,500 guns that had been stockpiled, 5 million rounds of ammunition for use of 2,159 special agents. Now, if you look at these figures, that includes 621 pump-action semi-automatic shotguns, 539 long-barrel rifles, 15 submachine guns, for crying out loud. The IRS purchased buckshot and slugs for their shotguns. The rifles are semi-automatic. I guess it's okay for the government to have whatever they want, but you can't even have a simple AR-15, by the way, and military-style H&K 416 rifles. Joining us now is Adam Andrzejewski. He's the CEO and founder of OpenTheBooks.com. His organization lets you, the American people, the American taxpayer, know exactly what's happening with your tax dollars and the government and how they have mismanaged and misappropriated all of the money that you send in. Anyway, he joins us. He put out a new report, and we appreciate him being with us. You call it the militarization of the federal bureaucracy. How are you?
It's great to be here, Sean. Thanks for having me on. As subject matter experts on this specific issue since 2016, when we put a piece co-authored with myself and Dr. Tom Coburn, the former U.S. Senator from Oklahoma, in the Wall Street Journal. That piece, many people still remembered. It was entitled, "Why Does the IRS Need Guns?" And then over the years, we've updated that. And so Gates did take our figures there. You've repeated them accurately. And, where is it written that the IRS needs the equivalent number of special agents to a U.S. Army brigade? This stuff's getting a little out of control.
Well, a little out of control. Why don't you explain to people some of the discoveries that might shock them? Because I read the report, and a lot of it shocked me.
So since 2006, we took a look at the 103 federal agencies outside of the Department of Defense that spent $3.7 billion on guns, ammunition, and military-style equipment. Now, Sean, there are 27 of those agencies that are traditional law enforcement. They're under the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security. But there are 76 rank-and-file general administrative civil agencies like the IRS, like the Department of Education, like Social Security Administration, the Department of Transportation, like Veterans Affairs, like Health and Human Services, for crying out loud, and like the IRS. And today, we've quantified there are more federal agents at 200,000 with arrest and firearm authority outside of the Department of Defense than there are United States Marines at 186,000.
So what does the IRS need weaponry for? Do you know? Because I don't know.
Well, every year we ask their spokesman to go on the record to justify their expenditures. And here's what they said. Very vanilla, back in January of 2021. They said IRS special agents have been using weapons throughout their history as they've consistently found themselves investigating the most dangerous criminals involved in organized crime, drugs, and gangs. And they went on a little bit. But the fact of the matter is that since 2006, through the first quarter of this year, so we've got updated numbers, the IRS has spent $35.2 million on guns, ammunition, and military-style equipment. And, Sean, since the pandemic, and here's the breaking news for your program here today, since the pandemic started, the IRS has spent $10 million of it purchasing guns, ammunition, and military-style equipment. They've spent $1.2 million, for instance, on ballistic shields, another $1.3 million on various other gear for criminal investigation agents, very non-transparent about what that purchased. They spent $500,000 on Smith & Wesson rifles, $500,000 on duty tactical lighting, $500,000 on Beretta shotguns, and they have so much gear, these guys. They have so much gear, they spent $354,000 on their tactical gear bags.
I mean, that is unbelievable to me. And by the way, we're talking about equipment that is not available to the general public. I have a gun collection, and I need a professional gunsmith and a professional law enforcement person to look at every one of my collection and determine that it is legal in the state of New York. They're very, very strict, and I follow the law to the letter. But, I mean, I have to hire these people just to make sure. Most of the changes they make are cosmetic, but I digress a little bit here. There really isn't a need for them when we have other law enforcement agencies. When we have an FBI, for example, I guess, maybe they're spread thin. They're too busy talking to big tech companies. But I can't think of any scenario under which the IRS would need this type of weaponry.
Well, you're right. And the scale is all wrong here. I want to put it in context, Sean, for the listening audience. So right now, the IRS employs 2,100 special agents. These are the agents that are armed. They have arrest and firearm authority. That is going to increase by 600 by the end of the year to 2,700. To put that in perspective, we took a look at the head counts across the country in local police departments. There's 12,300 local police departments across America. And the IRS, on head counts of their special agents by the end of the year, would be in the top 50 largest equivalent police departments in the country. That's what you're dealing with here.
Let me ask, because there are 76 agencies that are pushing, like regulatory agencies like the EPA, the Social Security Administration, Veterans Affairs, the IRS, Health and Human Services. Do they all have weapons, too?
They do. They do. As a matter of fact, Health and Human Services, Sean, they're supposed to be running the soft social safety net in this country. So why do they have 500 special agents? Well, according to the latest data, that we've compiled at OpenTheBooks.com, all the way back to 2006, HHS has purchased a stunning amount, $154 million, on guns, ammunition, and military-style equipment. Did you know that the National Institutes of Health, they have their own police force with over 100 police officers over at the NIH? That's actually bigger than 95% of the local police departments across the country.
I mean, that is insane. Now, for example, I read in your report, this can't be true. Tell me this is not true, that there are now more federal agents with arrest and firearm authority, 200,000 of them, than we have U.S. Marines, 186,000. Is that possible?
So think about this. The Biden administration can't secure our nation's borders. And they have 200,000 federal agents with arrest and firearm authority. There's only 186,000 Marines. So it's not a question of budget. It is purely and simply a question of political will.
So if you look at the years and the purchase years, it seems to have taken a massive bump up in the year 2021 under Joe Biden. As a matter of fact, by the largest amount going back to 2006, which you put in your report in a graph. Why did it go up so high in Joe Biden's first year in office?
Well, that's the question we have. And I think you have a smart listening audience, and they can come to their own conclusions, Sean. But who is the IRS preparing to battle? When they already had 4,500 guns for 2,100 special agents, that's more than enough. Why did they have to spend $500,000 purchasing more AR-15 style Smith & Wesson rifles? They're not in a war. Their rifles, these rifles, their old rifles were just fine. Why do they need to keep arming up? So those are a lot of the questions that we have. Look, I think that the weaponization of the House committees should call the IRS chief back. They need to start exploring this issue with the IRS. The last time
I will bring this up with the Judiciary Committee, and on that committee I have Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz, who has talked about it in the past. I'll bring it up. They're spending money on tactical combat gear. They're spending a ton of money on ammunition and new guns. Why do they need night vision equipment? Because they're spending money on that. Why are they spending money on virtual reality simulation training? I mean, this is sophisticated, these are sophisticated tools of warfare.
They really are. So we've been able to determine in years prior that the special agents over at Health and Human Services were trained by the very same contractors that train our U.S. military special forces. At an undisclosed location in the Beltway, they actually have a training facility that's state-of-the-art. And so we found that HHS special agents, they get, night vision equipment. They had 6 figures worth of virtual reality simulation training. They have ballistic plates, body armor, tactical combat gear, about $500,000 of that, brand new guns. And we see this playing out across the rank and file, traditional civil authority, general administrative authority agencies.
All right, quick break. More with Adam Andrzejewski on the other side about why our IRS and other agencies are armed to the hilt. Then we'll get to your calls, 800-941-SEAN, our number if you want to be a part of the program as we continue.
The left wants to silence Hannity. Don't let it happen. Make the commitment now. 3 hours every day at 3 p.m. This is the Sean Hannity Show.
All right, we continue with Adam Andrzejewski. Now, he has exposed why are all these federal agencies like the IRS and Health and Human Services and others, why do they have all of this weaponry that they have when we have federal law enforcement? Now, explain this part to me. Isn't this happening simultaneously while the same left-wing liberal Democrats are the ones pushing defund, dismantle the police and no bail laws? Is that happening simultaneously?
Well, it is, Sean. They want to take away your guns, but government is certainly arming up. There was a congressional hearing where one of the chiefs, they couldn't even explain what an assault rifle was. They didn't know the definition of that.
Yeah, we played that. That happened again last week. The head of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, yeah.
But the IRS...
By the way, and then they had somebody that couldn't define what a woman was, so I don't know what's going on there.
So the IRS, they don't know how to define the weapon, but they're buying them. As you mentioned, there's 15 submachine guns locked in their basement.
How does that make any sense? Just for the benefit of people that didn't hear this, here is the ATF director saying he doesn't hold himself as a technical expert. He's the head of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. He's asked a simple question: what is an assault weapon? Listen.
Could you, in 15 seconds, would you define an assault weapon for me? So if you go past 15 seconds, I'll just interrupt you.
No, so I'll go shorter than that because I honestly do think if Congress wishes to take that up, I think Congress would have to do the work, but we would be there to provide technical assistance. Unlike you, I'm not a firearms expert to the same extent as you may be, but we have people at ATF who can talk about velocity of firearms, what damage different kinds of firearms cause, so that whatever determination you chose to make would be an informed one.
I mean, so he's asked the question. He doesn't know. How the hell did he become the ATF director?
Well, this is why we need congressional hearings. And if you could carry that forward, Sean, there's precedent on this. After that Wall Street Journal piece that Coburn and I authored in 2016, then chairman of the U.S. House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, Jason Chaffetz, Jason Chaffetz, he held hearings on this, and he found the asset inventory of the rank-and-file federal agencies were a mess. Their gun lockers were a mess. They were losing weapons, including Uzis, over at the Department of Homeland Security. Kate Steinle, you remember that beautiful girl that got shot on the San Francisco Pier in 2015. Well, she was shot after an officer at the Office of Land Management lost his weapon. That was the pistol used in her murder. So these things have real-world consequences.
This is a very revealing report. We're going to take the whole report and put it up on Hannity.com so people can read it themselves. I would bet that every American that hears this is going to be a little shocked and horrified by hearing it. We really appreciate your time. Anyway, Adam Andrzejewski, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
John, thank you.